Only mode.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll be getting started here in just about a minute, waiting for a few more people to join. I'll be introducing Andrew Carbonell and Roger Caddell. The webinar should take about an hour. We encourage everybody to ask questions. Andrew will be able to respond there by typing, and Roger will be able to respond audibly. If everybody would just try to find the questions box through the GoToWebinar platform and say hello. Just want to make sure that everybody can type a question, and then we can see them, and then we can respond as well. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to shut my webcam off, as Andrew and Roger will be the ones presenting today. Andrew Carbonell has been racing in Spec Miata since 2006, when he was old enough to race. He's got multiple race wins, track records, since. He's currently running in the Continental Challenge ST Series, where he and his partner are leading the championship. He's got multiple wins professionally as well, multiple podiums, one win at Mazda Raceway, Laguna Seca. Very happy to have him. He's got experience at Daytona, a lot of experience leveraging and consuming data, and he is Mazda's factory driver helping us out tonight. Many of our Behind the Zoom features previously, Tom Long, our factory driver, professional driving coach, has led the way, as well as Randy Popes, Joel Miller, Tristan Vautier, Kenton Cook. We've had Roger Caddell on with us before. It went very well. He and Randy Popes presented a similar data leveraging seminar or webinar about a year ago. So very lucky to have Roger back. Roger's been with AiM Sports for many years. He's been a trainer for 31 years. He's got 39 plus years of motorsports experience as a driver, a mechanic, an engineer, and car owner, hundreds of wins, 9 championships under his belt. His unique racing and training background, we feel, enables him to fully understand and effectively share how to use, consume, leverage this racing data. Ultimately, our focus tonight, however, is on Daytona and trying to help prep our competitors for the 2015 runoffs. AiM Sports has been providing cutting-edge data and video solutions for the motorsports industry for about 18 years, as many of you probably know, from track day users to top professional teams. They do it all when it comes to electronic instrumentation, data acquisition, and video. They are considered by many to be the most trusted name in racing. Roger, would you like to take it from here, sir?
I would. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate it, and great to have Andrew along for the ride tonight as well. Looking forward to it. What we're going to talk about today is using data to prepare for the Daytona runoffs, and we're going to leverage Andrew's experience at Daytona, and we'll use data certainly, but we'll lean on Andrew quite a bit as well for the corner by corner stuff. So
personal experience.
There you go. So let's go ahead and jump. David, if you'd move your mouse out of the way, I think I can take over. And there we go. Okay. And just a couple of things about a couple of slides just to kind of get up to speed. But the way I look at it is what is data acquisition, and the important part of the data is data equals knowledge, and it's hard to make good decisions without a good solid bit of knowledge, and you can't really go a whole lot faster if you don't have knowledge on what to adjust and how to adjust it. not only from the car standpoint, from the driver side as well, and that's important. And data really helps us get those answers and make sure that those answers are really correct. So data equals knowledge equals speed, and the question I always ask is how fast do you want to go? So that's kind of where we're going to go with the main part of today's session. So oops, let's see if we can get that to, try to get it to slide one slide. There it goes. One of the questions I get a lot is why use data? It's becoming much more mainstream now, obviously, but the bottom line of using data is to improve. And you need to improve it in a number of areas. Of course, driver performance, what we're going to kind of focus on today. Vehicle performance is another important piece, and vehicle health. If you don't finish the race, you can't win the race. So, why do we use it? At the end of the day, it's results. So, that's really where we're going to go as we move through the day with the slides. A little bit hesitation. Come on, baby. There she goes. Data analysis concepts. This is a slide that I've put together and it kind of embodies the way that I look at data and go through the analysis steps of using data. And you're going to see a lot of that in the slides we look at, in the actual slides we look at as we're going. So the first thing I use is what I call the data analysis triangle. We talked about that just a second ago. It's three sides of data. It's the driver performance, the vehicle performance, and the vehicle health. Everything you're going to work with in data fits into one of those things. I have what I call the money channels. To me, those are the really important things. It's lap times and speed. We're involved in a performance-based industry, and if your lap times must be going down and your speed has to be going up, and that's really the important piece of what we do. So, of course, we have a ton of other channels, and all of those other channels really just support those money channels, in my opinion. So, if you're a couple of tenths slower or a mile an hour or two slower through a corner, we open up other channels to try to figure out why that is, and those are those other channels. Basic analysis steps. What is happening? I'm slower in turn 3. The trouble is many stop there, and what we really want you to do is use the data to not only know what happened, but then where has it happened? On the entry, the middle, the exit, whatever it happens to be there, and then why. And if we can't answer that question of why, it becomes very difficult to make the right adjustments, both either from the driving standpoint or from the mechanical standpoint. So always when you're looking at your data, always keep asking yourself that question: why? Ask like your 4-year-old son that's out there and just keeps asking that question, why. And once you get that answer, you're off and running. And of course, a big piece of that is it the vehicle or the driver that we're working on? Is the driver reacting to the vehicle's movement? Does the driver have to catch the car as it's sliding, or did the driver create that vehicle's movement? That's a critical component of the why, and in the data we can see those kind of things. So those are things that I want to make sure that that I follow as I go through my data analysis steps almost every time that I look and use data. So that's what that's where we will head. It's a little bit sluggish sometimes. There, it feels like it's going to go. There it goes. Okay, and so what we're going to talk about today is looking at some data from Daytona. I've got some Spec Miata data that we're going to be looking at and using, and as I spoke with Andrew as we were getting ready and preparing for this, he gave me some the 4 main pieces, the most important corners and sections of the track. And Andrew, you want to identify those 4 pieces we're going to look at today, and then I'll jump back in and we'll show them some data from those particular corners.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roger. And welcome, everybody, to this webinar. We have a few good points for everybody to learn. I speak from my Spec Miata experience as well as the Continental Tire Challenge SD car experience and other cars that I've coached in, but we'll talk a little more of kind of a lower horsepower approach. And I'd say the 4 points we'll talk about are going to be turn 1, maximizing your entry speed. It's a big brake zone, probably the biggest brake zone here that you'll encounter at Daytona, coming from, in a Spec Miata, about 40 seconds of acceleration all the way to, down to a 3rd gear corner where it will funnel everybody down. If you're drafting in packs, everybody's got to play nice to make it through turn 1 and make it safely through this brake zone. Then we'll go on to talk about both of the horseshoes. pretty much the only two corners in the infield. Well, there may be three, but you have the two horseshoes in the infield, followed by turn 6, which leads you back onto the straightaway. And in the horseshoes, we'll talk about what you want to do to maximize your speed and make sure you can stay with the pack, make sure you can stay with the partners who you're drafting with, and really maximize that. The next topic will be turn 6. Turn 6 is what's going to lead us back onto the straightaway and all the way to the bus stop, our second longest acceleration zone. And it's crucial to really get a good run off of 6, keep you in position for the bus stop. And last but not least, we'll talk about the bus stop, which is equally important. And biggest thing there is we want to make sure our min speed, that we can maximize our min speed, because whatever you roll speed-wise through the bus stop is what's going to multiply all the way on the way to turn 1.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. And he mentioned turn 1 as one of the critical corners. Let's start off with some data from that one. So I'm going to jump up ahead in one more screen. There we go. And just to put some data up there, I opened with this screen here. And by the way, I'd like to thank Todd Lamb from ATL Speedworks. I was looking for some very current Spec Miata data from Daytona, and he sent me some data from one of the cars out of his shop. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at Spec Miata data from Daytona, and that's what we're going to study here for the next 45 minutes or so. So for this particular slide right here, I've drawn a box around turn 1 as we're going in. On the right-hand side of your screen, we've got your normal measures graph or a strip chart, and in this case, I'm showing just the speed trace. And the bright red highlighted area in that area is the braking zone for turn 1. Okay, it's where the speed is dropping down, and so that's the right-hand side with four GPS speeds on top of each other from 4 different laps. And on the left side of the screen in black is a GPS driven line map of these same 4 laps. Of course, we're zoomed out a ways, so we can't see those. We'll zoom in a little bit later. But I've also colorized the map where blue is not on the brakes, and the red segments are where the driver was on the brakes, just so you have an idea of what we're looking at. So the turn 1, like Andrew mentioned, it's the reason this one is critical, and from a data standpoint that I look at, is that turn 1 braking zone and driving down into the corner. It's the longest by time and distance that you're in a braking zone on the track. And it's followed by a relatively short acceleration zone. So that's what we're going to concentrate on the data, and then Andrew will give us a little bit more tips on how to drive through that corner and use what we're talking about. But you can see the length of that braking zone on the deceleration side of the speed, and you can see where we're at on the track. So let's jump ahead one more slide and take a look at a single driven line around Daytona. It's in blue. I've also marked out in this image the braking point, approximately where the braking actually happens in a Spec Miata, and then down on the left-hand side in the middle of turn 1, I've named it transition. Of course, there is a transition or an apex at that in that corner, but that's fairly close. What I did want to show before I turn it over to Andrew to talk detail about this, and then we're going to talk about some more detail on the data side, is I did annotate this graph with the braking time from the data that I had from Spec Miata. The car was braking in this particular braking zone for 7.5 seconds on average. That's a pretty long braking zone, and a little over 1,000 feet on average in it, and the car was pulling 76 miles per hour out of it. And it was followed by, down there at the bottom of the screen, you can see the acceleration zone to the next braking point, where it gained to only 29 miles an hour and accelerated for 10.7 seconds and 1,138 feet. So you can see why that braking zone is critical, right, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. I love the picture. The transition point actually really depicts where the apex is, and shows everybody here how long that brake zone is and how much we want to maximize. I call it maximizing your straightaway. You're coming from such a long straightaway. There's not much of a run to the next horseshoe, so we really want to carry that speed that we've brought from the straightaway and carry that all the way down into the apex of turn 1. It's very easy to overslow that apex if you're focused on trying to get it slowed down to get a run out of turn 1. I tell people, usually when I'm coaching them, think of it, it's a little backwards, but you want to think of turn one as almost a fast in, slow out corner. You're not really trying to get the run out of there as much as you are trying to really roll your speed all the way down to the apex. And as you can see, the apex is actually just past. It's hard to see down there. I'm not sure if you guys can, if my if my cursor is working here. Okay.
That actually was pretty good.
Yeah. So if you follow the cursor here, right around there, there's a white stack of tires, and that's what I've always used as an apex point as a visual reference, right? So that's what, if you look at right here where the cursor is, that's what I see as an apex. And if we look at Roger's transition point, which I guess is where the car is going back to throttle, Roger,
Exactly.
it's it's just past that. So that shows you that the driver, how much speed he's carrying in, almost so much that he wasn't able to get the throttle at what I would call apex, but he's getting to power right after it. So he's carrying so much speed in that he's almost not back to the gas until he's through the apex and sees the exit of the corner. So that kind of proves my theory that of what I usually try to tell people, really carry big speed in there. It's such a large brake zone that if you're too focused on getting it slowed down to get a run out of there, you're actually going to overslow the brake zone itself, and especially the apex of one, where somebody else who's coming down the straightaway behind you and is running a faster line in, the amount of time that they can gain just in the brake zone is actually pretty substantial.
Yeah, because you're coming from such a high mile per hour, above 130 miles an hour, even in a Spec Miata coming into that corner. So there's a lot of time that you're in the brake, and you make up a lot of speed. You talked about some banking in the track there that you might be able to help with.
Absolutely. So if I come back here with my cursor, this is showing the brake zone back here. May have been, when cars are drafting, and I'm sure if this is Spec Miata data, there was
Absolutely.
some drafting involved.
It was all drafting data.
Yeah. So you have to realize that when you're running in a pack, the brake points might be a little sooner, might be a little longer of a brake zone, but you can tell even though they brake here, I'm sure they weren't braking very hard. They're just trying to stay in a pack. Reality is when you're running alone, if you can follow my cursor, the brake zone is right before this transition here. If we see that yellow line, right as you approach that yellow line is the brake zone for a Spec Miata. Or actually, a lot of cars, DST car brakes very, very close to that same spot. And biggest thing is, as you come into this corner and you're braking and you're trying to draw your line, you're trying to keep your eyes up and look where we're trying to go, you don't want to run all the way to the outside of this corner on entry. There's a crown in the road. So here as we come, if you can follow my cursor into turn one, you almost want to be left side of what we would call the crown or the middle of the road. So the road's kind of just is crowned in the middle, and you want to be left side of it, almost left side tires on the grass here on entry, and not letting the car go any further than about halfway over that crown. So you always want to keep at least the left side tires, left side of the crown, and that'll allow you to really be able to turn the car in and get to apex right around this point. If you are outside of that crown, you are off camber, and it makes it incredibly hard to actually make it down to the apex because you have to come over the crown and then back down the other side. Rather than if you were at least straddling it or left of it, you've got the banking to your advantage, and as soon as you turn in, you're gonna have the grip on the front tires, and it's gonna allow you to come down to apex, come off the brake pedal, and roll your speed. Looking for, remember, like I said earlier, looking for that white tire bundle. There's a white tire bundle. You almost want to aim at it, look at it as if you're trying to hit it, and I promise you will not hit it. The car is going to take one step and you'll apex right past it, just like this transition point shows.
Perfect. And the roadway slope is something that we just can't find very easily with data. So your expertise on that is fantastic. Okay, let's jump up another slide. Perfect. And we're going to follow each one of these corners with just some sort of a segment-specific data tip. And in this case, it doesn't have to do with that corner itself. But one of the things that we can find in data is how fast your feet are, and how fast you're getting from the throttle to the brake. And I just wanted to show a quick example of what that might look like. And so when you're looking at your own data, one of the things that I try to work with when I've worked with my son as he was coming up through and doing what he did was to that transition of coasting. If you're off the throttle and it takes you quite a while to get over to the brake, there's some wasted time there. So one of the things you can look at in your data is we're looking at it here on the right side. I've got the speed trace on the top, the throttle position in the middle, and I've got the brake pressure on the bottom third of the screen, and where the red box is around is I'm showing the throttle position for 2 different laps, a red and a blue, and then the brake pressure for red and a blue. And you can see that on the red one, the transition from full throttle down to and then brake pressure coming up was about 3/10 or almost 4/10 of a second, fairly quick for somebody that doesn't left foot brake. So that's not too bad. But on the blue lap, and it was in a draft, and that's why it shows so much. But the 1.48 seconds that the driver was off the throttle and never got to the brake pedal for a second and a half. So wanted to show you what that kind of looks like, and then that's something you can look at in your own data if you have throttle position that and brake pressures that you can really kind of watch and train yourself to be fairly quick on that transition. It's a fairly important piece. So let's go ahead and jump up one more slide.
Yeah, just to add a little bit. No, it's okay. Just to add a little bit to that point you were just talking, that it's seen very often in racing, and what I like to tell people is, you want to think about it as if you're on the clock and you're looking for time. If you find yourself coasting as you're coming to a brake zone and you come off the gas and you're waiting to go to the brake, those were 3/10, half a second that you could have still been accelerating, still been making time on the clock. Now you're just giving it up. It's just free time that you're coasting when really you don't want to be. Whenever you're in the car, we're trying to be either full throttle, either committed to the throttle or committed to the brake. Usually, especially on entries, in the middle of the corner, there is some coasting. We'll talk about that later. But you always want to make sure, if you're trying to maximize your time and get the most out of the car, you never want to be slow, slow with the feet from gas to brake, unless it's in the middle of the corner and you're managing the weight. But when we're just approaching brake zones, you want to go straight from throttle to brake. No time wasted in between there, because you're just giving up time.
Absolutely. If you're not accelerating or on the brakes and the other guy's still on the throttle, it's just exaggerated on top of it. So perfect. Okay, the next 2 corners we're going to talk about are the horseshoes, which are turn 3 and 5. And Andrew mentioned that the late apex was kind of a thing that works for him and has proven to be really good. Let's take a look at the picture in the next screen. There we go. Oops, I think we might have jumped 2. Can you go back 1? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I missed on that. Oh, there it is. Okay. Here's the picture of the track on the infield, and so at the right-hand edge there, you can see the braking point and the and the amount of time that you're in braking for this particular one, and that you have a decently long acceleration zone through the kink in the infield, and then into the second horseshoe. Very, very tight corners, and we'll talk about. Andrew's going to talk about some things that he sees and how he works those particular corners of the track.
Yeah, definitely. This is a great picture again with those transition points. I love them because this points out so clearly. These are 2 similar horseshoes in terms of what they look like and how the car reacts through them, but they are different. Each one has its personality. So the first horseshoe being what they call the international horseshoe, if you can follow my cursor, it looks like the apex is more or less right in the middle. And if we go ahead and look here to the west horseshoe, you see how much it looks as if it's an early apex, but really on track, what you don't realize is as we're coming down here through the brake zone, you actually almost make it all the way to this access road before you turn. It's hard to really get a picture of it here from this track map, but from inside the car, it feels like one of the latest turn-ins you'll do all season at any track. You almost are looking at the apex outside your passenger window as it goes by, and then you turn in right before you hit the end of this access road. And it's a little bit more of a diamond to where the first horseshoe is just a very smooth radius, and you're trying to kind of catch the apex in the middle as you transition back to throttle. The west horseshoe over here is actually what I like to call, you diamond that corner off. So you're deep in the brakes and you're not trying to round it off. It's kind of like you're deep in the brakes very late with your turn in, and once you get it slowed down and turned, it's almost a diamond point coming back off. So although it looks like an early apex, it actually from inside the car feels very late in terms of where you turned. Where you go back to throttle is early, but that's because the diamond point is all the way over here. like I said, it looks a little early, but in the car, it's a very late turn. And visually, what you want to see visually from the driver's seat, you want to almost be looking at this apex out of your passenger window before you turn.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Okay, let's jump up one more slide if we can. And there we go. And on this particular one, I did stay with that late apex look and feel of the data that we had. And again, he was in a draft, and the car was, and so he may not have been hitting them exactly where he wanted to, Andrew. But in this case here, there's a couple of channels that I like to use, and in order to see the apex and what the driver was doing inside. Some cars are going to have steering position sensors, and some cars aren't. A lot of cars will not have that. So one of the things that you have with an AiM GPS sensor is a channel that we call the GPS gyro, and it is reading out the rotation of the car in degrees per second. So while it's generally close to what the steering position sensor would look like or feel like, but it's what the car's actually doing. So we can't get understeer, oversteer out of it, but we can get the rotation of the car. And if you look at the bottom of that screen in the third window, the bottom of the third red trace there, you can see that where I've got the cursor, there's a hump there where the driver has turned in and got a lot of rotation done fairly early, and then has relaxed the wheel just a little bit and then peaked up and got more rotation right at the end on that GPS gyro channel. And what happens when you end up having to return in and do a double apex like that, or a double turn in, for lack of a better word, you can see by the blue trace right above that the driver tried to go back after the throttle, and when he did, then he turned the wheel again while he was throttling up, and it actually had to back out of the throttle to get the thing to not spin the tires, and then go back after the throttle once the rotation was completed. And you can see by where the X is, where the little in the black part of the screen, I've put a red box around the X because I know it's a little hard sometimes to see these screens via the webinar, but you can see how early that first apex was, and then the second apex that he did is more in line with what Andrew was talking about. So you have anything to add to that one, and not being able to get to the throttle too early on that one?
Yeah, this is a perfect example of what can happen to a lot of people in the horseshoes here at Daytona, and what makes this even easier to what makes this so easy to happen is when you're running in these trains of cars, it's very easy to follow the car ahead of you, and he's following the car ahead of him. So when he turns, you turn, now you've turned the car early. Everybody, you have to remember that the car ahead of you, he might be turning at his turning point. If you turn with him, now you're turning one car early. So once you're 3, 4, 5 cars back and the whole train turns in, you could end up turning 4 or 5 cars early because you see your train turning, and then end up with such an early apex as we see in this example. At that point, now you're so early down to the corner, you want to go to throttle to stick with your train of cars, right? Because you need to draft them. You cannot lose your partners. Well, you're not going to be able to. Look how early you are on the apex. Look how much wheel input you're going to have. It's like that old saying, right? If you tie a string between your steering wheel and your pedals, with this much wheel, you can only give about a quarter pedal. As you open the wheel, then we can go to full throttle. So we need to be able to get to the back side of that horseshoe. We need to move that apex all the way around to the other side so that we can go to full throttle and we can stay on our partner's bumper. At this point, you've turned in too early. You're going to have to come out of the throttle. It's going to ruin your run off of the corner, and at that point, you're going to lose the pack. And to go back to why this usually happens, it's because you're turning when the pack turns. So remember, guys, you want to stay in line with your pack and kind of do what they're doing, but have your marks. Always have your brake point, your turning points. Don't go specifically off of the car ahead of you. Always drive your line.
Perfect. Okay. That's a segment-specific data tip and a couple of channels that are very valuable in seeing the result of some of those things that happen. So let's go ahead and it worked for me that time. Let's go ahead and talk about turn 6. Turn 6 is the one getting you up onto the banking and the long run on into the bus stop. So let's jump up and look at what some of that data actually looks like, and right. I've put the cursor where the turn 6 exit is. So we've got the braking zone into it in that white in that red box. And where we're at on the track, of course, is over here in the black GPS-driven line map. And look at the run, how long the run is into the bus stop. You are on the throttle for a long time, which makes the turn 6 exit very important. You want to go ahead and jump up to the imagery, or you have something to comment on that particular screen there, Andrew?
We can go to the imagery, but that is a great example to show relative how long that run is to the other runs on track. It's it's your second longest run. It's the only longer one is from the bus stop to turn 1. Other than that, this is, I'd say, one of the most, if not the most crucial, the second most crucial corner around Daytona. Yeah, sorry, Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. The annotations there, I'm not sure if everybody can read it very well, but we're in a braking zone for about 3 seconds going into turn 6, and we accelerate for 34.8 in a Spec Miata. So the trade-off of that short braking zone for that long acceleration zone, I suppose this is one of those extremely critical corners where we make sure we don't overrun our braking, right?
Right. So unlike turn 1, where we spoke about kind of going against the grain and being fast in, slow out. You never want to be slow out, but you're not so worried of your exit as you are in your entrance through turn 1. Here in turn 6, we're extremely worried about how we enter and approach turn 6 to make sure we can maximize our exit. Your exit of turn 6 is going to dictate your run to the bus stop, and then from there may either put you in position to make a pass for the bus stop, or at least keep you with your pack, and then therefore from the bus stop all the way to turn 1. And like Roger is showing, look how short that brake zone is. So you really have to get it gathered and have the car pointed, really have your line clean, figured out, have your points, your turn-in point, kind of like going back to what we saw in the horseshoe. If you're in a pack of cars, you don't want to turn too early and be early apex and not be able to get on the gas, right? So we want to be able to hit our marks and be able to go to throttle one time and one time only and fully commit to the throttle to stay with our pack. Turn 6 is a little deceiving because it's so wide. So another thing, guys, at the exit of turn 6, let me see if somebody is that my cursor? Okay, I think I have control of the cursor here.
Okay, go ahead.
So right here at the exit of turn 6, you see the line is actually very wide. That's possible, especially in a Spec Miata if you're just, kind of rolling big speed. But ideally, as you exit turn 6, you kind of want to cut back across the track, almost left side tires to the grass as you come back onto the banking, just because it's less distance traveled. There's not really much reason to travel all the way around the perimeter of that, especially in a Spec Miata. Maybe if you had a moment and you're out there and you're just trying to stay committed to the throttle, you can be there. But ideally, you want your line in turn 6 to be able to point you and come across this exit road, what we see here. You don't want to be all the way out there. You want to be almost coming back across and touching the corner of the grass with your left side tire. So guys, just kind of keep that in mind. We don't want to run the big perimeter all the way to the wall. You're traveling a bunch of distance that doesn't need to be traveled. Also, you've got a lot of wheel input as we're trying to add throttle. So if we can get a, I don't want to call it a late apex because the apex is kind of it's semi-early in this corner, but what you do have to be, you have to have the car rotated and pointed and positioned on track to get a straight run out of there. It's if I had like an on-track view, it'd be, I could show you a little easier, but I always tell people left side tires on the yellow curbing. There's some yellow curbing there, and the further you can get left, the more grip you have exponentially. It's pretty impressive how much grip you gain and how much faster you can roll your speed through the apex of 6 the further you are to the left. You want to be left side tires on the yellow curbing and really have the car already rotated at that point, and you've got a short brake zone to do it. So you're pretty hard on the brakes, and it's also a pretty fast transition off of the brakes, which really allows rotation to get the car pointed to get our run out of turn 6. You don't really, guys, don't try to run a big arc out of 6. Try to get it turned and pointed at entrance so that by apex you can be full throttle and almost with straight hands coming across track all the way back onto the banking.
And how far up on that bank, since it's such an important corner, do you run up that banking, or is that really dependent on your exit speed?
Well, so you can run out, you kind of depending on your exit speed, you'll have to come off, you'll have to go out to the, not to the exit curbing, but I'd call it just past mid-track, and then start working your way back. Don't keep that arc and go all the way up to the wall. Kind
Don't
of,
go up the hill.
yeah, wherever you end up, start now. Now you want to come and cut across and come back, almost so your left side tires almost hit the grass
Okay.
where the grass meets the the
Gotcha.
tri-oval. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Perfect, perfect. And then we're going to be on this thing for 34.8 seconds in a Spec Miata at least, so a very long run. The reason I jumped ahead of this slide fairly quickly is it actually does show the driver did two different times, did two different things,
Right.
as far as the and now this blue one on this one is he did keep it a little bit lower on the corner versus the
Yeah.
red one. So I did want to just I did want to show that a little bit, and the interesting thing of the draft and the exit speed, which is the critical thing here, is the on these two laps that we're showing here on the red one, the difference in corner speeds on this apex is the 5.4 miles per hour on these two laps is, and the red one was 56.6 miles per hour and 51.2 on the blue one, and he held it down, which sounds like it's the preferred line, but because of that difference in speed, it was almost a full second by the time that run of that 4 miles an hour, that 5.4 miles per hour, I'm sorry, run down towards the all the way down to the bus stop. Exit speed is king on that particular corner, obviously.
Definitely.
Right? So, and at the bottom of that screen, you can see, and I didn't highlight it, but you can see that there's a time compare bar, what we call time compare bar in the AiM software, and it is just saying wherever you put the cursor, that's the difference between the two laps that you're showing, and you can see that these two laps were nearly the same when they exited that corner, but up underneath some of the information there up in the upper right-hand corner of that bottom side, it's above a second that the car was actually gained going down that run into the bus stop. So very, very critical on exit speed is what we wanted to talk about as much as anything there.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
huge difference in min speed there too.
Yeah, exactly. 4 miles an hour is big.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, draft and it's great data to look at, but there's probably some reasons for that. So the next one we're going to talk about is the bus stop, and one of the tips that Andrew wanted to talk about here again was that the maximum at apex speed, that minimum speed at the apex is we got to work hard to maximize that, because this is the most important exit for the length of the run coming off of it, obviously. And then I've got a couple of slides that show a little bit about the draft, and so we're gonna show a couple of laps. One was in a draft, one was out, and I'm going to show you some slides on that and take a look at that. So let's see if we can jump up a slide. Here's what the data would look like in that particular corner. Again, I've got 4 laps here just to show a bunch of data, but you can see the min speeds at the bus stop there. Basically 3 different speeds on min speed there, and then I put the cursor just a little bit on a little bit past the exit just to show.
Right.
But those are 4 laps coming out of the bus stop. Let's jump up to the graphic side, and Andrew can give you some feedback of where you want to go on this one.
Yeah, so the bus stop is, like you said, Roger, it's definitely one of the most crucial corners. It dictates, at the end of the race, it's going to dictate how you will finish. So, it's Daytona, and I can almost guarantee you guys it's going to come down to the last lap. There's going to be 5 people, 10 people, not 10, but let's call it 5 to 6 people who can win this race leaving the bus stop. So you really want to, while you're at Daytona all week practicing for the runoffs, if there's one place you really want to nail down and get down to a science, it is the bus stop, because that's going to dictate, that's your last chance. That's your last chance to stay on that guy's bumper and have a shot at the start-finish line, or possibly pull away or whatnot. But this is going to dictate the race in many cases. So it's just, it's called the bus stop. It's called one corner. Really, it's 4 corners, and the reality is, I look at it as call it 3, or actually 2, because as you enter, so that we'll come back and we'll start from the entry. As you enter the bus stop, it's all about, you want to carry in your speed from that you brought from 6. You want to have a good solid entry, but most importantly, you want to have the car settled down. You want to have all 4 tires. You want to have your grip on all 4 tires. No big no big pedal movements as you come through there. The car is going to be extremely loaded as you come through the entrance left and then bring it back right. So you want to make sure to do this all as smooth as possible to make sure you can maximize your grip. If you come in here, big entry speed and you're crossed up on the way in, and the left-hander, by the time you gather it up in the right-hander, yeah, you carried a bunch of speed into the bus stop, but now you've slowed down through the middle of it, probably big time, and it's going to hurt your exit and your run all the way to turn one. So as much as you want to carry big speed into the bus stop, you want to make sure that we can have it gathered and really have maximal grip in the middle of it to get the run off and all the way to turn one. So it's like I said earlier, it's kind of two corners, right? We want to come into it with a left-hander. We're going to trail brake. There's a lot of apex curbing both on the left, on the first left, and as you go right, and also in the last two parts, in the last right and the last left. There's a lot of curbing to be used. It is not very aggressive. It's just there's yellow concrete as apex curbing, and there's also these white strips, and there may be about 2 inches tall or an inch tall, so you can definitely run over it and you can definitely use it, and that will provide you with more track, more radius. It kind of makes it easier. If you're not using it, you are leaving something on the table. So I personally, the first curbing on your left-hand side as you approach the bus stop, I use all of that. I am almost the entire car on the left side curbing. My right side tires are maybe touching, what's left of the track, but my left side tires are almost all the way to the grass. The yellow curbing is underneath me, and then right side tires are on the pavement. That way, as I come down into the bus stop through the left-hand side, I am as far left positioned as I can be to then go back right. So that way I'm giving myself the opportunity to really kind of open up my side picture and give me a better view into the bus stop as I get there. If you're too wide on the first entry in the left-hander, now your next turn, the right-hander, the second part of the bus stop, you're going to have to add a big input. You're going to have to slow it down. You want to open up that radius as much as you can. Give yourself the biggest side picture possible. Give yourself that advantage. So let's be left in the first part using all the curbing. That way when we land on the other side of it, now we're positioned a car length over to the left, and we've got all this road to use as we come back right. And at that point, if we want to talk about pedals, you're just you're trail braking on the way in, kind of light on the brakes. Remember, we don't want any big motions. We don't want to be moving our weight around. We want to keep our weight. We want to keep the car as balanced as possible, keep the grip across all four tires, and that way we can maximize our speed, right? More grip you have, more speed you'll be able to roll, the better exit you'll have, the better run you'll have on the way to turn one. So kind of keep this in mind. Light on the pedals, a constant trail brake down through the left-hander using all of the curbing. As I make it through the left-hander, I'm bleeding brake pressure. As I bleed the brake pressure, slowly I'm transitioning the car back right for what I would call the second turn of the bus stop. As I come back right and then the car sets, we are now in the middle of the bus stop, what Roger has labeled as that transition point. And at that point, once you feel the car set to the left side, you feel the weight take a set. Now you can go back to throttle and get your run from there all the way out of the bus stop into turn one. The second half of the bus stop should be flat out. It's just a little bend to the right and then bend back left. Again, it's going to have the yellow curbing. It's going to have the white strips. You can run all over that. Actually, people go beyond that and start getting into the grass. I'm sure many of you have seen it during the 24. It starts digging a huge hole of dirt to the point where cars can't use it anymore. So I bet you as we get there, we'll be able to use most of the curbing and maybe some of the grass, but by the end of the week, I guarantee you it's going to be a hole, and we're going to have to stay on the curbing, on the track, and kind of just keep all four tires on the island.
Adjust as the weekend goes along. That's an important thing to always know, right? Exactly. Just an interesting fact here is as we were looking at this, I'm going to show you 3 slides here in a second of data exiting this driver against 2 laps in the same session, obviously, but 2 different ways of driving through the bus stop. We're going to show you some actual data from that, and look at that. This particular Spec Miata during this run, 40.0 seconds. a full throttle run and over 6,500 feet into turn one. So in fact, I had to check it several times in the data, go back and look at some old data to make sure that I was actually writing that right. I couldn't believe 6,500 feet. So yeah, you're on the throttle for a long time. So we're going to have, by the way, we're going to go through a few more slides and a little bit more discussion, and then we're going to have some time for some questions. So if you haven't typed in a question into the box, we're going to have a few minutes there at the end to answer some questions that you may type in. So let's look at the next slide and look at a little bit of data. This is a zoomed in shot of the bus stop, okay? And again, I've got a red and a blue lap, same driver, same session, but two different ways through there. And it was interesting here, and I know it's probably a little bit hard to see, but there's a the red and the blue, and right here where I'm just ahead of the driver's, the car's X, the location of the car, just ahead of that, you can see that the blue line is actually to the left of the red line, going up to the right in the car's direction. So the red line was using a little bit more of that curbing that Andrew was talking about, which is allowing that the car to have more options on the way out and get some things done. So right where the cars are sitting right now, where I've got that red X, you can see in the upper right-hand corner that the GPS speeds for both of these are identical at 80.9 miles per hour at this point, which is the minimum speed in the bus stop. As you can see in the middle of the three graphs is the speed trace. Both cars, both laps, the driver is flat to the floor and is already there and is committed and is going. And then that bottom one I wanted to show you in lieu of a steering position or something is that gyro again. And you can see that because of the driver's position using a little bit more of that curbing, you can see by this gyro channel that the red trace is dropping off quicker and the blue one is staying up there. So the driver on the blue one is having, because of not using quite as much curbing and having to drive a larger radius, is having to go ahead and keep some wheel on a little bit longer at that middle of the corner and towards the exit. And so with the driver in the red lap able to free up the steering wheel a little bit earlier, it's a little hard to see. I don't know how big it is on your folks' computer screens at home, but while we're at 80.9 miles an hour where the cursor is, if I go up one slide, this is 285 feet farther, and in only 285 feet, you can see the GPS speeds. The red lap now, because of being able to free up the car and open up the steering wheel and get to the throttle earlier, and Spec Miata's not having a ton of power. If you keep them bound up, it does pull them down. The red lap now is 1.3 miles an hour faster already, and only 285 feet, which is no time at all in effect at that speed. So it very, very quickly that car started to roll through the corner, and on the exit even better. So great exit on that one. Let's look at the next slide. And Andrew, you have anything to add to that? That's basically exactly what you were saying a minute ago, ironically enough.
That's exactly what I was saying. It's and like you said, especially in a Spec Miata, any low horsepower car, and Miatas especially, because they create so much mechanical grip. Anytime you have any wheel input, you're slowing the car down. So like Roger said, if we can straighten up that wheel and start our straight hand run, you're gonna pick up speed. You're gonna accelerate faster than the next guy.
Yeah, and very, very clear in this data here. So
yeah.
If so now let's jump ahead. The red one's got a little bit of a run on the blue one there, but if I jump now towards the I'm virtually at the start-finish line, and this was some interesting data that as you back here where the exit was down at the lower left-hand edge is where we exited the bus stop, and then the entire run. And at first the red lap had a little bit of an advantage because the exit speed was good, and then the blue one takes over. And by the time we get to the end of this straightaway, take a look at that. It's the blue one is 2.5 miles per hour faster than the red one when they get to the end. But look at the blue trace. Interesting to see how the speed trace is going up, and then all of a sudden takes a couple of shots down, and then goes back up, and those are bump drafts. So he's working the rear bumper of the car in front of him, and making speed, literally making speed. So the bump draft works. Andrew talked about it earlier that drafting is so important. That last lap, obviously the blue car here was pushing pretty hard. So interesting to see the bump draft being quite so clear, right, Andrew?
Oh, absolutely. For all those who have raced Spec Miata or seen a Spec Miata race, I'm sure you're very familiar with what Roger is saying. And looking at that graph, is that just look at the time variance on the bottom and the speed chart as well. It's crucial. Daytona is one of these places where as much as I wish you could run around there alone and get away from the pack, you really can't. Not in a Miata. You 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 need a teammate, you need a partner, you need maybe a few teammates to make this work. So this slide is great at showing us how big of a difference that is. You can see how that blue line just the speed trace increases huge until the bump, and then it matches, and then it increases again because he's still behind that other car. So it shows you even after the bump, it continues to accelerate because they're both working together. That's Spec Me Out in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, amazing. And I didn't want to clutter up the graph, but I did look at the longitudinal Gs, the sensor, and you could see the hits. There's a lot of data in this data where he was being the one being pushed, and you could see the hits the other way in the longitudinal Gs. And by the way, I did not put throttle position trace up here, but he was flat to the floor and never touched the brakes or lifted off the throttle either. The down at the bottom, something you don't see very often in a difference down a straightaway other than aero, and you can see that at the bottom left-hand edge of the time compare bar at the bottom of the white part of the screen, you can see that the red one is faster. In the AiM software, if the line is trending down, you're faster. And look at the way that this just goes through this parabolic curve and then starts back up as the arrow is taking effect of the two cars being together. And from about the last 2/3 of this run up this straightaway, the red lap is just making time on the blue lap like crazy. Or the blue one is the red one's losing time. It's the red one's trending up, which is slower. So yeah, just a very, very interesting look at how the draft works. So if you're going to race at Daytona and you're getting ready to go, be ready for it. It'll be like no other race that we've seen too often in Road America, obviously in the past as well, as long straightaways. So let's jump up one more. There's a couple of slides that I wanted to share as we transition out of maybe some direct discussion about the corners. Of course, Andrew's going to add some based on what we're seeing here on these math channels. I want to show you some math channels that you can use in your data, and it adds value to the data that you already have. And one of them, Andrew mentioned a little bit ago, which was a coasting channel. I call it a loaded coasting. I have two different math channels that I work with. One of them is a coasting where I consider your coasting if you're not on the throttle, you're not on the brake, and you're not in a corner. Okay, so none of those three things are happening. If none of those three things are happening, that's a real problem. From a data standpoint, from a driving standpoint, you need to be turning on the throttle or on the brakes. And so I've got one channel that does that. But then I have another one I've created that I call loaded coasting, which means you can be off the brake and off the throttle as long as you've got a lot of lateral acceleration. In other words, in the middle of the corner, letting the car set with Andrew talked about it a little bit earlier. Let's take a look at what one of those might look like. So here's what I've done here is on the right-hand side are some channels. We'll talk about those in just a second. On the left side is turn 3. It's the first of the two horseshoes on the infield. And Andrew was mentioning to me that that's an area that you do want to have the car and let it be settled and be turning in and using all your forces of the car to be doing laterally and allow you to get to the throttle and make sure you get back to the throttle at the right time in the right spot. This is so I created a channel, and you can see it in the red box in the white half of the screen here, and you can see that on the second one down, there's a lot of channels here. It makes it a little bit harder to see, but you can see that there is no throttle here for a pretty good chunk. You can see he's already dropped off the brake pressure, so there is a point of time there that looks like it's 100 feet or 150 feet or so that he's not on the throttle, he's not on the brakes, but he is in the corner. He is turning the car, and I'll call that a loaded coasting channel. We're only looking at one lap here, but you can take a look at multiple laps of when you're doing this style of driving that seems to work pretty well, and especially in that corner, and you can compare. Okay, I dumped the brakes and got back off the throttle really quickly. Did that help me or did it not? With the loaded channel, loaded coasting channel, we can see that. One of the things that we do though is not only do we have this channel here at the bottom called loaded coasting on, it's either a 0 or a 1. If you're doing it, it's a 1. If you're not, it's a 0. Then I can also take the math and tell you how long you coasted in time and in this case, at where I've got the cursor, is 2.43 seconds since the beginning of the lap, or in feet, and we can do that for each little segment, or cumulatively on the lap, or even on the entire session. So math channels are very, very cool. If anybody wants these, drop me a note. You're going to see my contact information in a minute. I have a lot of these things written up already and ready to be imported right in directly into your AiM software. I've got some that use pedal sensors, brake pressure, throttle, and I've got some that we base it off of longitudinal and lateral Gs, GPS-based channels as well. So they're not quite as accurate, but they really still do use them pretty good. So we're anything to add to that real briefly, Andrew, before we move on?
Yeah, that's a great image, and I really very impressive math channel. It's something that I talk about many times, especially in a car like a Spec Miata that creates so much mechanical grip. It's very easy to overslow the car by the time you've reached apex if you are braking all the way to apex and then going straight to throttle. Those cars have so much grip and actually roll so well that there's time to be had, time to be gained when you can, get the car pointed right. You set your weight, and we can start our turn in with some brakes still applied. But at that point, once we've got our trajectory and we're aimed at the apex, we're pointed where we want to go. If you can come off that brake and let the car just naturally roll down and do the last part of its deceleration with its own mechanical grip, there's time to be gained. We're talking about Spec Miatas. We're talking about sports cars. Obviously, in formula cars or heavy downforce cars, it's a different story. They're a lot stiffer. Things happen faster. In these types of cars where we're so soft and we're kind of waiting on the car to set, it's something you want to do. You want to have that point of kind of no pedals, right? Turning in and letting the car coast down its last bleed off its last little bit of mile an hour with its own mechanical grip on the way to the apex. And this is a great way to find it in data and study it if you're not doing it yourself, or maybe somebody else is. This math channel is really great to really show it and highlight where some drivers may be doing this in specific corners.
Exactly, and it's a great point. This is not just a Spec Miata show we're talking about here. This is Daytona, and there are different cars that'll be running. And a channel like this and other channels, data is knowledge, right?
Yep.
And knowledge equals speed. And if you try it this way a couple times, look at your data. Did it help or did it not? Data is where you find out those answers. It's not just a feel. Sometimes the feel is great, but sometimes data is really boss when it comes to things like that. And one other channel I want to get to before we call it an evening is I've created in the same set of math channels that I'll pass along to anybody that asks for them via email is some braking channels. Daytona is not you're not going to be you're only braking 5 times. There's 5 braking zones there, but one of the things we can do is we can turn on a switch 0 to 1 when you're on the brakes and when you're not, based on longitudinal Gs if you only have a GPS-based logger, or if you have a throttle or brake pressures, we can actually use values to do that as well. And in this case, you can see that we calculate when we're on the brakes, and then I've got 3 channels here that I've just thrown together. I wanted to show you. It's braking, how long you were braking in time on brakes per lap. I also can calculate the distance you're on your brakes, and then percent of time per lap. So even if you wanted to look at it as a percentage of the lap, we do that math as well, and those are all be done, and then you can colorize the map like I have here on the left-hand side in the GPS-driven line map, where the red segments are the braking zones. So it's even easier to see it very clearly. And this kind of a channel can be done with virtually anything else, with throttle, partial throttle between 2 different numbers, so we know exactly how long you're at the partial throttle side, anything over 85%, or in what gear, and how long you're in 3rd gear for number of feet and time. Those kind of things we can do with it virtually any channel. So let's talk about, to anybody that's listening, if you want to talk about some math channels, we can do that as well down the road. So let me, as we're closing, just a couple more slides left, and then I'll turn it over to Andrew. There is some learning e-training video sessions that are out there for anybody that wants to learn a little bit more about the software. Some of these things we've been talking about are in there. I call them LearnFast e-training videos. There's a YouTube site out there, user/AiM data. There's a bunch of them out there. There's the webinars. This webinar will be there in time. Last year's with Randy is out there as well, so you can review that one as well, all on the YouTube site. So a bunch of information out there if anybody wants a little bit more information about the data side. and some contact information and social media information. So there's a way that you can go out and get a hold of us, and if you want to chat about a little bit more. I'm on the road tomorrow morning early to VIR up in Virginia for the next 5 days, so email is going to be best for me. I'll be traveling quite a bit, but if anybody wants some of those things or has any other questions, I'd be willing to help you out. Andrew, you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who joined the chat and the webinar, and for joining and watching and taking the time to see this, and also to wish all of you luck for those going to the runoffs, and really I'd be happy to answer any questions there. You see my email, candrew@gmail.com, and I'll be available at the runoffs. I will be there participating in the SM race, so that should be a bunch of fun. And if anybody's got any questions, and if there's any way I could help any of you guys, that's what I'm here for. No problem. I'd love to do it.
One question just came in, Andrew, and we're right at our time limit. But let's answer one question. It is a great question. If you're leading a car in the draft and you hit the rev limiter just past the start-finish line, you're hauling, right? Because you're in a draft. Is it better to push in the clutch when those things happen, or is it and coast, or stay in it and hope for the best? What's your opinion?
Do you own the car, or does somebody else own the car? At that point, once you've hit the rev limiter, you're geared out. You're out of gear. If there's somebody behind you pushing you, and he's got more gear, and I can't say I've ever done this from experience, but just looking at this question, thinking about it, if you can clutch in and he can continue to accelerate you, so be it. That's a little tricky. I don't know that I'd really want to recommend that, but usually, once you're out of gear, you're out of gear. I've always stayed in it. If we're coming to a corner, you can just stay in there, or just crack the throttle just enough so you're right before the limiter. But realistically, if you want to take the chance and try something new, yeah, clutch in and have the guy behind you push you those last few mile an hour. If not, just kind of come off the gas and keep it right at your limiter. Because that's what you got. That's what you're geared for. Might as well keep it there. If you just clutch in, you're gonna decelerate and you're gonna lose speed on the way to your brake zone. So at least maintain the speed you have. Obviously, you can't gain any more, but maybe you don't want to lose any either. So I would say keep it right there. That's what I've always done. Is just keep it right at the limiter. Don't bounce it off it, but just maintain what you can.
I'll answer that just a touch more too, as well, from a car owner standpoint. In the past, I won't go there, but I would think from the data has always showed me that that staying in it actually was it does decelerate when you're at the top of your RPM range. That it does decelerate so abruptly that it's you pop it neutral obviously, but at 130 some odd miles an hour aero is going to slow it down. And it really would come down to me is your rev limit a false high. I mean, in a Spec Miata, you got 7,000. You can actually take that car a little bit more and it's not going to hurt it. But if you're in a car that has a rev limiter that's near the danger point, you probably wouldn't want to continue on with that. So that would be my side. Do you use another question for you, AC? Do you left foot brake or right foot brake when you're driving a sedan like this?
Yeah, so like you just mentioned there, a sedan, right? So predominantly whenever I'm driving a sedan type car, I right foot brake. There's in these types of cars you have to wait for that weight to transition. You're not trying to rush anything. It doesn't transfer weight that fast. So you can left foot brake if you feel comfortable that way. I predominantly right foot brake. There are instances where I'll go for a left foot. It's maybe in a little bit of if there's a kink, or really most of the time I'm just trying to bring the pedal pressure back up, just trying to pump the brakes. But for the most part, I right foot brake only because we're waiting on these cars to set. We're waiting on the weight to transfer. So if you try to do it faster than it's going to transfer, you'll end up with tire lockup or something of that sort. So I predominantly right foot brake.
And the data has showed me time and time again that if you do jump on the brake too abruptly, I don't mind the left foot braking side. It's right. All how you do it. But if you jump on it too much, it really upsets the platform on cars, like especially in the sedan side. It'll actually throw too much weight too quickly up on the front, and you'll lose some stuff that way as well. One other nice question here. Where do you want to be on the entry to the bus stop? Mid-track, bottom, top? Where's a good spot to be in entry?
I'm up against the wall on the right-hand side, maybe a few feet away from it. If you're trying to run a defensive line, you can be mid-track. Just realize, like, if you're mid-track, that first left-hand corner is going to be, you're going to have to turn harder from the middle of the track than you will from the outside. You are narrowing your radius. You're giving yourself less of a turn to work with if you're going to be mid-track. If you're defending and you don't want the guy behind you passing, yeah, be mid-track. That works. But really, remember, we spoke about trying to make that whole section as wide as possible. Give yourself as much room to work with and make it as smooth as possible. And for that matter, I want to be right side of the track on entry, coming all the way across, completely eating the curb on the left side to then position me as far left as possible for the next right-hand corner.
It's ironic that the larger the radius that we can make these things run, it is a huge difference in the speed that you can carry. It's amazing, but you're at Daytona where you're never going to be alone, and running that perfect line is probably not going to not work too well. So. Another question just came in: does the left side entry make the right turn easier? No, because you have to rotate, right?
Right. So, yeah, if we enter for the first left-hander on the left side of the track, it's going to be a very tight turn, and you're going to have to immediately come back right for the next one. So you're almost going to be behind the car. We want to be right side again, right? Be as smooth as we can on the way in. Give ourselves the radius.
And yeah, great. I just had a question come in, and we're getting up against the time clock here, but this is such a great question. And this is put on your Carnac hat, right?
Right.
And look into the future, right? But what position leaving the bus stop on the last lap will likely win the Spec Miata race?
You see, that's funny because I've been, I've done plenty of races there, and there's been times where I was second place and won the race, or I've been as far back as fifth place. I've seen two trains, one train with two cars and one train with three cars, almost swap two times from the bus stop on the way to turn one. So it's a roll of the dice. It is really quite incredible to watch the speed differences and just how different cars work together. I can't say you want to be in this specific position to win the race on the way to the bus stop. I mean, on the way to turn one. You definitely don't want to be the lead car, that's for sure. Everybody's going to do their part to fall back. But in terms of being second, third, fourth, fifth, I think all those guys have a chance. Even the leader, if they pop too soon and he comes back, he can even get the draft and come back to the lead.
I was just going to ask. That was going to be my last question before we moved on. Is can you do that too early and end up getting to the lead and then losing the lead before you get to the finish line? That would be horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's 40 seconds of acceleration. We're doing, we're on the throttle for a while, so that lead can definitely swap ends a few times before the start finish.
Perfect. I appreciate it, Andrew. I appreciate all your feedback, and I'm gonna turn this back over to David now and tidy up and close things up. I had a great time. Anybody has questions, that you have our contact information, and David, what do you have to close this up with?
Roger, Andrew, thank you guys very much for walking everybody through the course. Really very interesting stuff. So thank you for your time. I know it's late. Andrew, you're in Miami. Roger, I think you're in Washington State. Thank you, everybody, for joining. There are just a couple other offers we want to put out there for you guys. Chris Long is our spotter for the Mazda Speed Source prototype team, considered one of the best, if not the best in the business. The best, fantastic. Well, we think so, and we've brought him, or we're bringing him to the runoffs, and he's going to help coach in all of the 28 classes, but really the focus will be for the Mazda competitors. We're going to help subsidize to drop his rate down, and then we're providing it complimentary to our Mazda, the Spirit of Mazda award winners. So his contact information was sent out in an email through Constant Contact that we had about the runoffs. I sent it also again today. So really consider taking advantage of his services. Really will be eye-opening and probably safer at Daytona. There's been some tough crashes there. So also we've got on Tuesday, September 22nd from 4 to 5 p.m., Tom Long going turn by turn through Daytona, answering questions along the way. He won't focus quite as much on the data, but really, of course, just about nobody better than Tom Long, Andrew Carbonell might argue. I think it'd be very interesting. But really, really happy to have Tom there. What we're also going to do is Tom's going to be helping to coach a few drivers during the week as well, complimentary from Mazda. He's going to try to handle up to probably 5 racers. So during the 4 to 5 o'clock behind the Zoom segment at the track, which will be held at the Mazda hospitality tent in the red lot, we're going to raffle away the 5 spots for Tom. And then the following night from 6 to 10 is the banquet. The awards banquet. Drinks, wine and beer will be open starting at 6 o'clock. People will start to be sat at 6:45, and you'll be able to start eating immediately. But food, the actual entrees, won't hit the table till 7:15, and the agenda will ultimately get a lot more exciting from there. That's it for us for today. Really looking forward to seeing everybody at the runoffs. I'll be there helping with parking starting on Wednesday the 16th. If you have any questions about the runoffs, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My name is David Cook. I'm the Business Development Manager for Mazda Motorsports. You've got my contact information. Thank you guys for joining and looking forward to seeing you here in a few weeks. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.